Hi class, welcome to week 2. I want to take the next few minutes and wrap up week 1, covering a few topics in a little more detail, and then introduce week 2. I hope you're doing well and hope you've enjoyed the course so far. Week 1 was really an introduction to the book of Ecclesiastes, particularly in your reading through the book and doing some outlining and some basic analysis of the book in your exegetical notebooks, and then reading the introductions in Bartholomew and Holmstedt's commentaries, as well as some videos and some additional reading. As you can see, the book of Ecclesiastes is a very, very complex book. It's in many ways enigmatic and hard to make sense of. Sometimes it's difficult to follow Kohelet's train of thought or understand exactly what he's talking about, and this is reading it in translation. And as you can tell from Bartholomew's commentary, the book of Ecclesiastes has been interpreted in many different ways, from Christological to very humanistically. People have debated whether Kohelet is a pessimist or an optimist. Some even have asked if he's a misogynist. Another debate is about authorship. And as you've read, the book of Ecclesiastes is very, very late Hebrew. It's very unlikely that Solomon was the author of the book. It's much more likely that the book was authored in the Persian period, certainly the post-exilic period, and some have even argued that it's Hellenistic in nature. In fact, the Hebrew is so difficult in places that some have actually proposed that Ecclesiastes was not written in Hebrew initially, that it was written in, let's say, Aramaic and then translated into Hebrew, although this is very, very unlikely. Another issue is the pseudonymity. So if it wasn't authored by Solomon and the book never claims exactly to be authored by Solomon, it kind of intonates that. But then the book is pseudonymous. Who was Kohelet? Was it even a male, since Kohelet is a feminine participle? And does the persona last throughout the book as you read through it? Again, you initially get this persona of a royal individual, obviously very, very well off, very elite, likely being depicted as obviously he claims to have been king in Jerusalem. But does this persona last throughout the text? Or is it kind of a facade to get the reader into the book and to do something else? And it's also very, very difficult to outline. In fact, Holmstedt and his co-authors basically say Kohelet has no structure. I tend to disagree, and I think you find some other proposed structures in Bartholomew's commentary. We also find prose and poetry. In fact, this week you will translate the very first section of the book of Ecclesiastes, which is poetry. And you'll also translate some prose sections and some sections that seem to kind of mix those genres. And again, we also find debates about the genre of Ecclesiastes. Is it instruction literature? Is it a biography or a pseudonymous biography? Is it pessimistic wisdom literature, or is it something else? And then we find some basic concerns or some repeated concerns throughout the book. One of them is of course, oppression. Kohelet sees oppression under the sun. We find this phrase, this word hevel, translated vanity or meaningless or enigma. It's a very, very difficult word to translate the essence of the word. If you kind of do some, if you look in the grammars or the dictionaries, you'll find that the essence of the word has something to do with breath or vapor. In fact, it's the very same, it's the word from which Abel's name comes in the beginning of Genesis, and Abel kind of lives up to his name. He's poof, there one instant and then gone the next. Kohelet is also concerned with what the yitron is, the benefit is of various things. And we also find this kind of phrase, under the sun, and we'll cover each of these phrases in detail, not only in your own study, but also in some videos throughout the course. The one thing I would offer you, and some have commented on this already, is the question in at the beginning of the book, what benefit or profit is there? Uh, I would ask, is that a rhetorical question? Or is that a question to invite you into dialogue with the text? And we'll cover this a little more in detail a little later. You also read some sections of Holmstedt's commentary, grammatical commentary. And again, it's a very, very deep and linguistically focused introduction, and it's very easy to get confused, particularly if you don't understand the linguistic terminology that Holmstedt is using. But I do want to highlight for you some key things to pay attention to and take notes on. I don't expect you to understand everything in that introduction, nor do you need to for the commentary to be useful. But he identifies some key grammatical features, one of these being the switch between two different relative pronouns. One of them, asher, who, which, or that, you're probably very familiar with from your Hebrew classes. Another one is a prefixed relative pronoun, shen. And it also means who, which, or that. It means exactly the same thing as asher, except it's not a separate word. It's actually prefixed onto various words. So read that section very closely. Become familiar with how that prefixed pronoun is pointed, that is the vowels that go along with it. And then again, be able to identify that as you're translating along. Another thing that Holmstedt discusses is word order in the book of Kohelet, and in some ways it's difficult and a little bit different